So I noticed some problems with the discussion of solo queue toxicity and just repairing solo queue in general, and the fact that people have different definitions of what is wrong with solo queue currently, because people are just underlaying or I guess blanketing the entire solo queue problem on toxicity. Now, I want to talk about the terminology of that because there's a difference between toxicity versus griefing. I think those are two entirely different things, and those are two entirely different problems, right? They both require a different strategy to solve. One being, I would like to at least relate to toxicity being something that is more verbal, something that is just said within chat, right? Or I guess if we had fucking voice chat, right? Right, 2021. But there's a difference in that, and then there's a difference in griefing, or I guess you can call soft inting, right? Which is something that you do within the game, actions with your character that determine the outcome of the game itself through your micro mechanics, right? So these are very big distinctions, and I think that's what's, first of all, dividing the entire topic when it comes to the community and discussing this topic, is that just there are two different crowds that are arguing for two different things, right? And now I'm not saying that there isn't a problem with, people saying bad things within chat, and then there or maybe there isn't a problem of griefing, right? Like, no, they're both problems, but they're just two distinct problems that require very different methods to solve the problem. So this video is just going to just talk about griefing because that's the easier thing to solve, and also I just believe in free speech anyways, so I believe that you can say whatever the fuck that you want in chat, barring some small exceptions. But and also, it's kind of just too hard to police because it's very subjective, and then also there are just many ways to work around it, and then it becomes, well, like, who should be more entitled? The person that is seemingly trying to not offend someone, or the person that is offended, right? Like, those are two lines that blur together quite heavily through multiple instances throughout our entire history. So, like, it's just too big of a fucking problem for Riot to tackle anyway, so they shouldn't even try, even though they tried to solve it with, Riot Lite and shit. But anyways, so Riot has also already stated that the reportable offenses are tailor-made to the ratio of reports like a specific region has for specific words. So Riot has actually already done the machine learning for things that people consider heavily offensive. That's why, obviously, like, racial or homophobic slurs are put on blast because people find those things offensive. And then yet there are some things in which in different regions or whatever, you'll find, like, different languages and stuff. You can't say certain things because it's offensive in that particular region because of just their culture or whatever, right? So Riot has kind of already done this toxicity policing anyways, right? It is best that they can do in terms of just being hands-off and being a little bit less subjective than a regular human being would be when reviewing this type of shit. And obviously there's sarcasm and stuff into that. Like, people, you got to realize that the human language is just way more complex than you initially think. So, like, to just act like you can understand the human language to such a nuance to where you can control people's speech, I think is just kind of idiotic. But anyways, let's stick to the griefing aspect, and that I think that you do have to start out with high elo, like a lot of other people said, because it's easier to see from a playstyle perspective. I don't think a lot of people touched on that aspect because, well, if someone is griefing in Challenger and they're doing something which just doesn't make any fucking sense, right? Now, in Gold, for instance, maybe that person's just bad, right? Like, sure, they got to Gold and they should have some particular mechanics or whatever, or they should have some idea about the game, But, if someone buys, I don't know, fucking Magic Pen boots and then dies twice in gold, I don't really know what the fuck's going on. Maybe that guy's just bad. There are a lot of bad gold players or silver players, and then also, of course, like iron players or bronze. Like, I don't know how the fuck you police that. So griefing obviously has its restrictions just in the way that the game is set up, right? And that there are obviously very bad things to do, but you can't judge people's skill, at least at that low level, based upon their decisions, because some people just have bad decisions, but they end up winning the game some other way, right? So you have to start out in the high elo, and I think that's the biggest reason why it makes sense. Not because those are the highest influencers or the streamers or the pro players or whatever. It's just easier to do, right? You can instantly tell when someone is intentionally throwing, and that's also coming from an analytic perspective. It's like you can easily tell if you just watch a lot of LCS games or whatever, and like you can tell when someone made a bad play that probably shouldn't have been made. But at the same time, in solo queue, since the teams are uncoordinated and stuff, it's even kind of easier to tell, especially when it's intentional in that factor. And then also, of course, there's the very real perspective that this helps out influencers and streamers, obviously. And yes, sure, that caters to that particular audience. People might say, oh, that's not fair because they're getting special treatment. Well, guess what? You get special treatment if you have, thousands and thousands of viewers and are able to influence public opinion. Like that's just the way it is. Sorry. Like, things are just not fair in real life. Okay. So, and they are just advertisers of your game. And now, when I say this, it's that Riot, they're slowly losing advertisement due to streamers just getting fed up with solo queue, right? You look at a lot of the popular streamers, they get very frustrated. I mean, Voyboy, obviously, with his statement that escalated this entire topic, and then, of course, like, a lot of people are citing I Will Dominate and how he's very different from his stream versus, maybe when he's just doing a talk show, or you have a multitude of pro players too, where Riot is losing advertisement from pro players themselves, people that are paid to fucking play their game for the sake of just paying their game from Riot themselves. They're literally paying them, and yet they're losing out on their hard-earned advertisement dollars that they pay the players, right? Because a player has to get a little stipend, or I don't know if they still do that actually, but they enforce a specific salary, and they set up this LCS studio and all this shit. So it's strange that Riot doesn't realize, and I think they're kind of slowly coming around to it because of their league partner program and how they're spending a little bit of money in order to give back to the content creator community, but it's kind of late in my vision, at least, that they're trying to cater to this because they realize the market is actually shifting. Not only that, but like, dude, you don't even advertise on TV or anywhere else, right? Like, no one fucking watches TV anymore. So how are you going to get someone that's 16 through like 30 years old? How are you going to get their attention other than through influencers and streamers and that market? There's really no other way. That's why our audience is so valuable. So why are you discarding that entire demographic or that entire populace that is bigging up your game, or they're supposed to be, but then you just discard them by throwing out all of their concerns? It just doesn't fucking make any sense as a company. I don't know who's in charge of the Riot marketing and shit, or budgeting or whatever, but they clearly just don't have, like, whatever cards are in their hands. They just don't fucking know. I don't know. Maybe they're faced the other fucking way. I don't know. And shout out to, Yamato, of course, for also saying that this stuff trickles down, because it does. Not only that, but this is far too hard to implement into lower elo because, as I said, player skill and just knowing if a player sucks or not. So you have to cater somewhat to the higher end, because those guys influence all of the other people in the lower end, right? We even talk about how the idea of, I guess, the solo queue mentality of ranked had started. Like, all the pro players and all the streamers were saying, oh, well, D2 ain't shit, or D5 is the worst. D5 players suck ass. And then that trickles down to, oh yeah, platinum people suck. Everyone below platinum, like, that's just trash, And then all the platinum players say, oh yeah, all the gold people really fucking suck. Like, I don't know how they can't get to. And so, as you can see, it all has a fucking cascading effect, right? And everyone just calls the other person shit that's below rank for them, because all the streamers and the pro players had called even like low challengers or master players shit, right? It all shit rolls downhill, as the saying goes. So now, how do you implement this? Well, I mean, how much do you think it would cost Riot to stick a Riot employee on high elo monitoring? I bet I could get someone to do that for $30K a year easily. Get someone who, I don't know, is like Diamond 5 level, right? So they have the knowledge to actually see the game and figure out what players are doing things correctly and what players are clearly fucking griefing, and then go from there, right? Have maybe one for each division for high elo, one for challenger, one for masters, maybe two for like Diamond 3 and above, or maybe 3 people. So that's like 5 people in total that are getting paid $30K a year to do this job. And it doesn't even have to mean that they have to do this job within Los Angeles, right? This is clearly a remote job. So I don't get what the big problem is from Riot side in order of paying people, especially because, once again, think of this as advertisement dollars, not just someone doing a job that gets zero return. I think that's their biggest problem, is that they have a block in this mentality that I'm going to be spending that's 150K. I'm going to be spending 150K on something to where I can't see a return on. No, you aren't going to see a return on it. You're going to see a return on streamers and pro players actually wanting to play your solo queue, which then reflects on to everyone else within the player populace to be like, oh, wow, all these pro players and all these streamers are having fun. I want to have fun too. Let me go play some League of Legends, right? It's the same shit with LCS, right? If you see LCS pros on a stage and they do something with a champion, you want to go out and you want to try and replicate that, and you want to play good. So that's that whole thing. And then not only that, but anonymity is paramount for someone doing this job, because you don't want them to be influenced by streamers or pros reaching out to them, as much as they are working specifically for the higher echelons of league when it comes to just dignified people, or I guess important people, is that you don't want them to be influenced by other people to then target ban someone. So this has to be done blind. This has to be something to which it's kind of an independent job. And now I know that humans obviously are just going to have a bias anyways, right? Like, even fucking journalists have bias, which a lot of them don't want to admit, but you can then switch out people that have this job, right? So that there isn't this consistent bias. Now, there is one caveat to this entire system, right, of having someone that is in this position, is that they're just going to have human errors, right? They're going to see someone that, I don't know, goes this wacky ass build and then goes like 0-8 or something. Maybe they're just going for the wacky build because they actually believe in that build and they just had a really bad game, right? Now, you have to look for patterns and trends and shit, and I'm sure that Riot could easily provide data for that. So, but the problem won't be solved immediately, right? Like once that person does that bad game, it's not like they're going to get banned immediately. So it's going to have a long-term effect, but the short-term effect, people have to realize that it's not going to be that way necessarily. And then secondarily, let's also allow the Players Association from the LCS to have, maybe a vote every month or every 2 weeks or whatever to submit a player to be reviewed in Challenger, right? Like, don't even have it as a thing of to where, oh, you can choose from a list, or maybe allow them to choose from a list A through D. Allow them to choose who should be reviewed on this list that you already have your eye on to be reviewed, right? And so giving this kind of power, which would give a large amount of bias to it, because then the pros would talk amongst themselves about, oh, who should we kick out of Challenger today? But it doesn't guarantee that player to be removed, because Riot would still have to do their homework about that player. And also, just pro players are most impacted by the repercussions of griefing anyways, right? They have to play solo queue in order, first of all, to practice, and then second of all, their advertisement as it is anyways. But there are two ways of advertisement, in that they advertise the idea to where you can play with the pros if you get high enough, which is the entire reason as to which they allow pros to be in this server anyways, right? So there's that kind of weird illusion to where you can play with the pros if you're good enough, and then maybe you'll get recruited into a LCS team or whatnot, right? That's the whole idea of what LCS was founded on anyways. So, and then secondarily, of course, they have to do this as their job, right? So, well, I guess firstly they have to do this as their job. So you have to make it to where they want to do it, which then will go back to what I said before, to where, yes, they will be able to play with other people and get them more inspired and shit like that. And maybe we can have a meaningful ladder at the end of the fucking day. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe that's a pipe dream in NA. So if Riot, first of all, is thinking about policing the verbal toxicity, let's just remember that it's different shit talking, to your stream or, to your audience versus saying anything in game. So I wouldn't hold that if they're thinking about talking about verbal toxicity, right? Which I think they should just specifically focus on griefing, because that's probably what most high challenger players care about, or masters players or whomever, because they're playing the game at that high level because they actually care about winning, right? That's probably the most important thing to them. So you should focus on that first, which is far easier to police, of course, and to rule out who's playing bad intentionally, because there's literal objective evidence in some circumstances. And then also, as a side note, people that are saying the Tribunal should be brought back or whatever, Tribunal was complete shit. I'll link my video above or below or whatever, and also give a link as to why Riot actually discontinued that, because they did a Riot Please. But essentially what happened in the beginning was that I think you got IP from it back in the day. So you were literally given IP for reviewing cases. And then also the Tribunal was mostly for chat. And it's much harder to have a Tribunal for griefing, right? Because you have to have a certain level of skill in order to review, a play. Not only that, but you have to have the context of maybe what happened before the play. So then even if Riot was going to restrict Tribunal to a specific rank, like say Platinum and above, you can only be in the Tribunal, then how do they determine exactly when that specific play started for the amount of griefing? I just think it's a little bit too complicated. It's relying too much on the, I guess, majority of which probably doesn't know what they're looking at in the first place anyways. So it's kind of ill-placed community power that doesn't need to be given, and there was a problem with the tribunal in the first place because there was a lot of false positives, which once again you can look down below for in the description about why Riot chose to not do that anymore. So at the end of the day, I do think that griefing has somewhat increased. I've been playing this game since season 1, so I think the first champion that I ever had saw a release was Misfortune, I want to say. So I've been playing this game for a really fucking long time. It's kind of sad that I'm not Challenger, but anyways, fact of the matter is, I actually agree with what Voyboy is saying in that there is more griefing nowadays. There is more intentionally feeding. There is more just general toxicity within the game. And whether that is contributed to just people maybe having more knowledge about the game, so then therefore they get more upset when they see easy mistakes that could be easily prevented, then they get that much more upset because they expect everyone to know those types of things. I don't know what it is, but I have noticed a pretty significant increase in griefing specifically. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts, and I think Riot is easily dropping the ball on this entire idea, and they're losing a significant portion of their player base because they aren't appeasing to the higher ups, which is the big display of their game, right? That's what you kind of watch the game for anyways, is a mastery of skill, especially within the LCS and shit. But you watch a lot of streamers for a mastery of skill. There are basically only 3 categories in which you watch something on Twitch for, which is 1, that the person is funny, 2, that the person is really fucking good at the game, or like 3, the person is very informative, and so you kind of learn things from them, even if maybe they aren't good at the game, right? So there are only a couple different categories in which you actually watch someone for when they play a game. So I think Riot completely misses the mark, and they miss the understanding of exactly what an influencer, a streamer, a pro player is to a game. And they've obviously shown a track record of not caring about content creators in that regard anyway, so it's no surprise.